What happens when two powerhouse women in music sit down for what should be a friendly chat, but old wounds and industry secrets come bubbling to the surface? What you're about to witness is one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history, where a simple interview spiraled into a confrontation so intense that it ended with a guest storming off set. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below, because this story has layers that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these two stars. The atmosphere in the studio that morning was electric. Cameras glided across the floor. The audience buzzed with excitement, and the producers were already celebrating what they believed would be one of the smoothest interviews of the season. Kelly sat at her desk with her signature warmth, her bright smile reflecting genuine anticipation. The moment Gwen stepped onto the stage, her platinum hair shimmering under the lights, her black and white outfit sharp enough to command attention, the crowd erupted. Kelly welcomed her with open arms, praising her decades-long artistry, her evolution from rock rebel to fashion trendsetter, and everything she had conquered in between. Gwen thanked her politely, though there was a coolness behind her smile that only the closest observer would have noticed. It wasn't hostility, just restraint, a kind of emotional armor. The interview began like any other: light laughter, shared memories, compliments exchanged in all the usual places. They spoke about Gwen's music, her growth, her creative reinventions. Gwen explained that evolution wasn't optional in the industry, it was survival. Kelly nodded along, encouraging her. But then, subtly, Kelly's tone shifted. Her questions became more probing, more pointed. She asked about professional relationships that had ended abruptly, collaborations that dissolved, partnerships that fizzled out. Gwen's posture stiffened. The air between them tightened, almost imperceptibly, but enough that the front row leaned in without realizing it. Kelly pressed further, asking whether Gwen ever looked inward when these patterns repeated. The audience murmured. Gwen raised her chin slightly, her expression unchanging, though her eyes hardened. She countered Kelly's insinuations with calm firmness, pointing out the double standards that followed women in the music industry. Her words were controlled, sharp, and laden with meaning. But Kelly didn't ease up. Her questions kept pressing, nudging, poking at old wounds Gwen clearly didn't want reopened. The studio energy shifted from excitement to an uneasy tension, as if everyone collectively sensed they were drifting toward dangerous territory. And then, one question too many. One insinuation too sharp. That was the moment everything changed. The silence in the studio after Kelly's last question felt heavy enough to shatter. Gwen's smile remained frozen, but something in her eyes sparked, an unmistakable flash of warning. She leaned back slightly, recrossing her legs with deliberate composure, and the audience unknowingly held their breath. Kelly tried to maintain her hosting charm, but even she felt the shift. She attempted to soften the moment by gesturing casually, as though she hadn't just touched a nerve. Yet the attempt fell flat. Gwen's voice, when she finally responded, was steady but edged with unmistakable steel. She told Kelly that relationships in the industry were complicated, intense, and often short-lived. That didn't make them failures. That didn't make her the problem. But Kelly, intentionally or unintentionally, kept pushing. She listed examples, not by name but by implication, of collaborators who had spoken in interviews about creative disagreements or unexpected endings. Her tone wasn't hostile, but it carried a journalistic sharpness rarely seen on her usually soft morning show. Gwen tapped her fingers against the armrest, her patience thinning. She noted how interesting it was that when male artists were assertive, they were praised, but when women demanded excellence, they were labeled difficult. The audience clapped softly, unsure if they were meant to. Kelly nodded, acknowledging the double standard, but insisted she wasn't talking about gender. She was talking about Gwen specifically, about patterns, about reputations, about whispers the industry couldn't seem to shake. Gwen's eyebrow arched in disbelief. She asked Kelly whether she was genuinely curious or simply trying to provoke something for ratings. The tension rose like heat from a fire. Kelly's producers exchanged panicked looks behind the cameras. Some members of the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others leaned in farther, captivated by the unraveling dynamic. Kelly insisted she only wanted authenticity. Gwen let out a short, humorless laugh. Authenticity, she repeated, leaning forward. She questioned whether Kelly truly valued authenticity or simply performed it. Her voice was low and controlled, but every word landed like a stone. Kelly tried to maintain calm, insisting she admired Gwen and wasn't attacking her. But Gwen wasn't buying it. She accused Kelly of being anything but neutral, of choosing her questions carefully, of framing them to highlight weaknesses rather than strengths. Kelly's expression faltered for the first time. She insisted again that she was simply asking about things people already said. Gwen's response came swiftly, her tone turning icy. She asked Kelly whether she wanted to have a real conversation or just pretend to one while pushing a narrative. The air felt tense enough to spark. The friendly celebrity interview was long gone. What remained was something raw, something personal, something dangerously close to erupting. And it did. The explosion didn't come in the form of shouting at first. It came through quiet words, sharpened to a blade's edge. Gwen leaned forward, her voice a low whisper that somehow carried through the entire studio. She suggested that Kelly wasn't as supportive of other women as she portrayed herself to be. The accusation hit the room like a slap. Kelly blinked, taken aback, her composure cracking. She denied it instantly, but Gwen wasn't slowing down. She claimed she had heard things Kelly supposedly said in private meetings. Comments, opinions, little digs disguised as concern. The studio froze. Kelly insisted she wasn't aware of what Gwen was referring to. Gwen gave a bitter laugh and said that maybe the people repeating Kelly's words weren't lying. Maybe Kelly simply didn't like how those words sounded when held up to the light. Kelly's face drained of color. Her voice stammered as she asked Gwen to discuss these things privately. Gwen shot back that privacy mattered only when it protected Kelly. The tension morphed from discomfort to full-blown confrontation. Producers stepped forward, uncertain whether to intervene, but neither woman gave them an inch. Then Gwen escalated. She claimed she had receipts, messages, conversations, recordings. The audience gasped so loudly it echoed. Kelly's eyes widened in disbelief. Legal concerns, consent, context. She scrambled to regain control, but Gwen wasn't listening. She stood up, pacing, her voice rising as she vented years of pent-up frustration. Kelly tried to anchor herself, leaning against her desk, urging Gwen to breathe, insisting there must be a misunderstanding. Gwen rejected the idea outright. She accused Kelly of undermining her reputation, influencing executives, causing collaborations to collapse. Kelly protested through trembling words, claiming she never tried to sabotage anyone. For a moment, it seemed like Kelly might regain control, but then something inside her snapped. She fired back, saying maybe she did voice concerns. Maybe her opinions were candid. Maybe Gwen's behavior had raised legitimate red flags. The audience collectively gasped again. Gwen's expression turned cold, dangerously calm. She said this was the real Kelly, not the sanitized, smiling host the world adored. Kelly retorted that Gwen's career issues weren't her responsibility, that Gwen's chaos hurt everyone around her. Gwen slammed her hand on the desk, shaking the mugs and sending a ripple of panic through the crew. They were no longer talking about careers. They were talking about betrayals, divorces, mental strain, public images shattered versus protected. Each accusation layered onto the next like a collapsing tower of lawn. The studio air felt suffocating. The audience couldn't look away. Kelly's voice trembled as she tried apologizing, but Gwen wasn't finished. She pulled up a message on her phone, claiming Kelly once called her a cautionary tale. Kelly staggered back. Everything was falling apart. The final chapter of their confrontation played out like the climax of a tragedy. Two women, both wounded, both defending versions of themselves the world never sees. Kelly tried to speak, but her voice shook. She insisted her words had been taken out of context. Gwen demanded to know what context could possibly justify such a comment. Kelly couldn't answer. Every attempt she made crumbled under the weight of the moment. Gwen continued, her voice steadier than Kelly's, but trembling with controlled fury. She accused Kelly of using her influence to shape narratives behind the scenes, while maintaining a pristine public image. Kelly tried to interrupt, but Gwen cut her off sharply, saying Kelly didn't get to control the narrative anymore. Not today. The audience watched, stunned, feeling almost guilty for witnessing something so deeply personal. Kelly turned toward the cameras, as if wanting to walk off her own set. But there was nowhere to go. She was trapped between the truth Gwen believed, and the image she had worked years to uphold. Gwen stepped closer to the desk, her voice now a mix of heartbreak and rage. She said she once respected Kelly, admired her, even, but that admiration had been built on a lie. She said she had believed Kelly was different from the women who played politics behind closed doors, who quietly undermined others to stay relevant. But now, she claimed, Kelly was simply better at hiding it. Kelly whispered that she had never intentionally hurt anyone. Gwen looked at her with an expression that managed to be both disappointed and fierce. She said intentions didn't erase consequences. Intentions didn't fix reputations. Intentions didn't repair opportunities. Lost because of whispered doubts and subtle sabotage. Kelly's eyes filled with tears. She apologized again, this time without excuses. But Gwen had already reached her breaking point. She gathered her things slowly, purposefully. The studio was so quiet that even the rustle of her jacket sounded loud. She walked away from the desk, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. In a voice that cracked just slightly, she said the final blow, that she had truly thought Kelly was better than this. That she was heartbroken to be wrong. That disappointment, she said, was heavier than anger. And then she turned and walked off the set. The audience remained frozen in silence. Kelly sank into her chair, face in her hands, shattered. The cameras kept rolling for a moment before someone finally cut the feed. The interview had begun with applause. It ended with devastation. 2 careers shaken, a friendship lost, and a moment burned into television history.